Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael, and we're excited you joined us for another adventure.
So today's guest is Emma Powell. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. You guys have been fascinating to watch as you've been growing so fast. I talk to a lot of people who want to be syndicators and want to do deals. And when I first met you, it was just someone else saying that they wanted to do it. And then you did something amazing. You went out and you actually did it. So congratulations. You guys are really doing very well. I saw that your most recent deal is fully subscribed. It's so cool to watch your progress over this last year.
No, yeah. And thank you so much for that. And I have been just so thankful to have met you, right? Like you were definitely one of the very first women I ever met in the space. And you were very willing to jump on the phone with me and answer questions and get on Zoom calls. And so I'm just very thankful to have met you because all the knowledge you have given me and even the confidence has just grown so much. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you. I think there's something I have two pieces of me. One's women power, girl power. We're all going to support each other because women are different than men and we need different support structures and we think about things differently. And then there's the other half of me that's like, whatever, we're all humans. Like, why are we segregating into groups? And so I hear you. And then I hear the other side. I have these two halves of me that tend to battle that out a little bit. So.
Okay, yeah, no, I totally understand that. Emma, would you mind sharing with our listeners a little bit about your background and why you started investing in real estate?
Yeah, I started investing in real estate because I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and all the experiences in the childhood and the things that kind of shape you and turn you into who you are. And I remember this comment once. My grandparents and my mom, her parents, did not have a very good relationship, and so I didn't really know my grandparents growing up, even though they only lived about 3 hours away from us. I had actually never met them. And so I was very curious about her family, why this was going on and what they were up to, what they were doing. And she was telling me about growing up with their parents, and they had a good life. I don't really understand where the break came from. I don't think there was any bad blood. I think it was just very, very independent people. And it was just always something that, we'll get around to it later, little connections, but just nobody was really seeking those deeper connections. And I said, well, how are they living? He retired from the Air Force. She grew up in the UK. And
super
so she
cool.
was quasi-American, because American parents, and they were back living in the States. And I said, well, what do they do for a living? And she says, oh, well, they're retired on their Air Force pension. And I said, do they have any money? How do they survive in retirement? And she said, oh, well, he made $1 million in the stock market. I was like, what? In the early 80s, $1 million in the stock, that was a lot of money. And they were living off their investments. And I was probably maybe 9 or 10 at that conversation. And that just kind of lit something in me that my grandpa, even though I didn't know him, he wasn't an influence in my life, had made $1 million in the stock market and was living off passive income. So I started reading the newspaper and trying to figure out the stock thing. And then as years went by, I got more interested in real estate. So I learned to do graphic design by doing floor plans. She designed our house and just really, really fascinated with houses. I did my first real estate photo shoot as an adult. And I thought it was weird. Why are we taking pictures of a house? Right. Once I got into the house and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I can go in and look at houses where people live and imagine why they're moving and all the stories that those houses have in them. Was really motivating to me. And the stock market just never happened. I never got it, never really liked it, never really understood it. But then when I realized I could make millions of dollars in passive income in real estate and provide really great opportunities for my investors to do the same, that is what really lit the fire under me. So, and I knew I could do it without having to work full time, that I could do it on a part-time schedule. So that's why I invested in real estate, and kind of the background and understanding those early influences or those influences in your life, I think helps you stay focused when things get tough later down the road.
No, yeah. And thank you so much for sharing that. So what were you doing before real estate?
Well, as I mentioned, I was a real estate photographer. So I started out, I just had an associate's degree and a general business degree, got married, had some kids, started working online, teaching graphic design. I got really interested because my background, playing with the computer and the floor plans. I sold my first little piece of artwork when I was 10 for like $10. I was so excited. And then I just started really getting into computer graphics as a kid. Probably when we got our first computer, I was probably about 10 or 11. And as an adult, really got into Photoshop and graphic design and started teaching these classes online, and immediately realized that if my work had better photography in it, that I could sell more classes and I could sell more online courses. And so I switched over to photography and realized, oh, photography makes a lot more money than teaching graphic design. So I just switched over to be a portrait photographer, started getting into weddings and real estate. So I really settled on weddings and real estate photography. So real estate during the week and weddings were my weekend moonlight. And what that happened is I realized like the biggest profit margin that you have in photography was commercial for the real estate.
Yeah.
What I was charging for the time that I was putting in was much higher than, say, a portrait shoot or babies or the consumer photography. And then weddings were like the high end consumer photography. So I was really looking for niches where my time was being highly rewarded. And then when I switched over to real estate, that same concept came into it, because I realized focusing on commercial real estate and high yield on time was very important to me. And so those experiences back with my previous businesses helped me really focus quickly in real estate, what sector I wanted to be in. So while I was a photographer, I went back to college, online college. I was piloting a program for my university where I got my associate's degree. And it was just like 60% off if I took like these basic, like get ready for college classes. And so I took those, and then they gave me this massive discount. So I just went and finished college. I have a degree in entrepreneurial business management, which is basically like startups, capitalizing ventures, wearing all the hats, because you got to do a little bit of management across a lot of general topics, project management. Finished that, started working as a marketer for a data science company in the Austin rugby team. And then right after that, my husband got laid off and I wasn't making any money. Like my photography and my marketing jobs could barely, they couldn't really pay the bills. We were dipping into savings. And so he immediately found another job in Salt Lake City. So we moved from Austin to Salt Lake. And then I had no business. And I was faced with that question, do I start up another photography business? Kind of hustle, kind of a grind. Even though I really liked it, it was weird hours on the weekends. And I just, getting into my 40s, is that's really one the career? Do I want to hustle and grind to make, $30,000, $40,000 a year? Or do I want to hustle and grind and make millions of dollars a year by finally investing in real estate, getting on the other side of the camera and becoming an investor, which I always wanted to do, but didn't know how, didn't have enough money, didn't know anybody, didn't have any experience. And I was seeking out real estate investors in Austin. I knew so many of them. And they talk and I'd be like, oh, I should do that, but then never did. Wasted opportunities. And so when I got to Salt Lake, I just buckled down and started really researching it and spending time with people who were doing it at the REIA, the real estate investor meetings. And that's really what catapulted it. I had this reason why, this driving desire, this whole life reset that I had to rethink everything and then put myself around the people who had the knowledge that I needed to finally reach my goals, instead of just, I don't know what to do. I'm not that kind of person. I don't usually waste time. I don't know what to do with it. It really wasn't me. I think because I have so many kids, I think just for so many years, I was so focused on homemaking and homeschooling and all those things that real estate was always getting pushed to the background. And I just said, you know what, I obsess over things and I learn a ton, and then I just go out and I do it. So why can't I just do that with real estate and finances finally, instead of always these things that either aren't making money or are making smaller amounts of money. So I just turned that energy towards real estate. And that's really where things started to take off.
No, yeah. And thanks so much for sharing that. And something I want to point on too is that, like, even for myself, right? Like being a military spouse and like moving all the time, like it doesn't matter what it is, right? You can have to move often, you can have children, but your job somewhere gets put on the background, right? And I don't know why it happens necessarily, because it's part of who we are as well, right? Like we could take action to hopefully make that not happen. But so how were you able to finally decide, like, no, I'm going to do real estate and actually still focus on my children, right? Because like that's a huge mindset shift in itself. Because I know you are very active with them now, and I know they're homeschooled. So like, How do you have that blend all together?
Number one thing is the kids are a little bit older, and so they don't take as much time. Another huge thing is I'm not a micromanaging helicopter type of parent. I wouldn't say that I'm hands off as far as time spent, but I'm super hands off with enforcing rules. I manage my kids the same way I manage a business. The best parenting books I've ever read were business management books. How to empower people, how to find the intrinsic motivation, how to recognize the genius that each person has that's unique. That whole put the right person on the right seat on the right bus. But see, with kids, you can't go fire them and go choose a new one. What you have to do with kids is you really have to figure out, what is this kid motivated by? What do they like? What are their goals? And I have some kids that are one way and some kids that are another way. And some of them are high achievers and some of them are not. That's been difficult for me to watch my kids who are not high achievers not achieving. It's very frustrating. And so it's been an exercise for me on how to learn that I can't control people. I can't control situations. All I can do is live my life, set an example, give them opportunities that they can take advantage of, and then be patient with them if they decide to go a different direction than maybe what I would choose. I've even had to watch how much advice I give them, because my oldest daughter, after she moved out of the house, she said, I can't even make my own decisions. I said, why not? I've never told you what to do. We never had any rules. We never had any forced this or forced that. I've always encouraged you to be a free thinker. And I like kids to be a little bit feisty. And she said, well, you just had it all figured out. Like, you've done a ton of research, you know the answers. And so if you said this is the way I should do it, I was like, okay, you know better than me. And she said, I just deferred that responsibility onto you because I trusted you. And now I don't know how to make decisions. I said, well, didn't you watch me going through that process, learning, talking about it, experimenting with it? You watched that. You know how to make decisions. Now go take care of it, because you've moved out and you're on your own now. I'm more like her friend now than her mother, which has been a great shift, and she's been very successful. But for the younger kids who are even more pleasers than she is, I've had to really watch how much I even tell them what I think, because they just do it. It sounds ridiculous, but I think setting an example and living your best life is the best gift that you can give your kids. You have to ask yourself, if my daughter or my son was going to live my life, would I be happy for them? And if the answer is no, then you're doing something wrong. You need to set the example of the life that you would love your children to be able to live. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I do. I'm very independent, just like my mom and my grandparents. But I have had to consciously prioritize relationships because I'm just like them. I can take it or leave it. But I've chosen this family style, this family life, and I've had to be very conscious about building those relationships, because for independent people, it's very easy to just go off and do your own thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of brings me to this other point where it's like, Susie and I talk about this all the time, and it's like, do you want to be the expert or do you want to be the advisor, right, for your kids? And in business as well, right? Like, do you want to give them the answer, being the expert, or do you want to say, hey, maybe you should look at this or look at that, and be the advisor and let them make their own choices, right? So it's more like, is it transactional or translational as well? That's the way I look at it. So
that's a good distinction, because I've never really made that delineation before between an expert and advisor, because you have an expert advisor. And if you're giving somebody advice and they really respect your advice and they just do whatever you tell them, sometimes in your life, it's time to think, well, maybe I need another advisor. It's the same. I switch CPAs every couple of years because I just need to make sure that I'm getting a variety of advice, because CPAs make mistakes too. And I just don't want to get sucked into somebody who's doing something the wrong way. So every couple of years, I'll just switch, get a new perspective. Taxes, get another look, maybe some sort of an amendment. For me, it's like, watch out who you're trusting as your advisor, because nobody's perfect. Some people think they know more than they actually know, and sometimes getting a diversity of opinion can help you avoid certain pitfalls. So it's the same thing in parenting. I don't want to be the one that they're getting all their advice from, and teaching them how to think critically and how to evaluate their own advisors is a huge skill, because none of us can do stuff like this without advisors. But we do tend to delegate the responsibility to the advisors rather than learning how to critically think about what's before us. It applies, like I said, the best parenting advice is usually good business advice too.
Yeah,
No, and I really like that. But like a lot of people, even to like move forward to like get a new CPA or like find somebody else to actually get advice from, but to like take it in and, make it their own and then spit it back out is really difficult. So like what I guess made you move to that point? Because like most people are like, no, I'm comfortable here. Like I can stay in like where I'm at. It'll get better. You hear that a lot. Like if I just like wait a little bit, it'll get better. So like how do you continue to be like, no, I have blind spots, but I need like these new people in my life to help me find them?
I hate to answer any question with it's motivated by fear, because I don't think that's the healthiest place to be coming from. But for me, I just know too many people who've gone to jail, literally gone to jail, been indicted for raising money illegally, gone to prison for running Ponzi schemes, accounting fraud, mortgage fraud. It's definitely motivated by fear. The other fear that I've seen is, we've all talked to that guy who's like, oh, I used to invest in real estate. I lost everything in whatever crash, 2008, and now they don't do it anymore. And so what I like to pick their brains and ask them, what did you learn and what would you do differently? Because they obviously had some hard times and weren't able to bounce back from it. So those stories of people committing crimes, sometimes unwittingly committing crimes, like you get a tax audit and suddenly you owe thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars because your CPA was doing something wrong and they audited one person in the practice, saw this, and they audited everybody in the practice. Like those types of things. I don't know if fear is maybe the right word for it, but learning from other people's mistakes. I'm the seventh kid in my family. I had an opportunity to watch my older siblings making good decisions and bad decisions. I think just humans tend to learn better from bad decisions because they're more impactful because of that fear. So switching out advisors, switching out and just diversifying my group of people, it for me, it's just because I've seen so many people lose so much or owe so much or whatever, because they get tunnel vision, they get too comfortable, and then they start justifying things in their head like, oh, this is okay, I'm just going to do it this once, and then it spirals out of control. So yeah, it's definitely for me is a little bit fear-based.
No, that's totally okay, right? Because like even from my like life experiences, like a lot of them that have been the most impactful were like from negative situations, right? So but I find that amazing because I'm like, okay, well, now I know exactly what I don't want to do. So, I mean, at the same time, like, although there's fear with it, it's also very empowering because like you can see it, in the future, almost like I know what I need to get away from, and this is how I'm going to do it. So, no, I really love that. But like, even like taking, that negative impact and turning it into a positive one, because I see it with you, right? Like, even with your stories with your children. So like, how do you not bring in the fear-based part when you're, I guess, giving them advice? Or do you actually add stories like that in? Or like, how do you make that blend?
I love that you asked about balance, because I've used this analogy a couple of times. Once we've started into the hiking world here. We live in Utah now, so you can't live here and not become a hiker, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of hikers talk about a phenomenon called packing your fears. And so if you've been in a scary experience before, let's say you're hiking in a hot area and you can't find any water. And so the next time you go, you're overpacking water, or maybe your water filter's frozen. So you got a brand new water filter, and you end up carrying more weight than you really need to be because you've packed your fears. And you can look in someone's bag and you can see exactly what bad experiences have happened to them, because where the redundancies are, is usually where they've had an experience where they're going to pack more on their back. And emotions are the same way. We pack our fears. So people will have a bad experience happen to them. They'll say, okay, I'm never going to do blank. But then they're cutting off that entire limb, and they're not able to take advantage of the opportunities that could come if they were able to say, instead of making this hard and fast rule, like I'm never doing this whole class of things again because I got burned once or somebody I knew got burned once. It's almost learning from your mistakes a little too well. And then you start to get more and more niched, which is, again, the same thing as getting in your comfort zone. It's getting in your fear zone. Like, I saw someone lose everything from that and that. You have to evaluate every situation. Let's go back to the hiking analogy. Maybe you were hiking in the desert and you didn't pack enough water. That's scary. That's extremely dangerous. But the next time you go hiking, you're hiking in a mountainous area with a stream every 3 miles. Why are you overpacking water? Why can't you look at where I'm hiking and say, yes, that was scary. I'm going to get over my fear. I'm just going to make sure that I have the appropriate water filter. I'm only going to carry as much water as is reasonable. I have a map that tells me exactly where the water is. I'm not going to be irrational and pack all this extra water. So being able to evaluate a situation, facing your fears, acknowledging that that was a mistake, acknowledging what you learned about it, not doing that again, but that doesn't mean it needs to apply to every single situation that you're in. So that balance is, I think, extremely difficult to strike, and it's a constant battle. That's why it's called balance.
Yeah, I love that analogy, Emma. And just because we're huge hikers too, so like it resonates really well with us and our listeners. So yeah, I mean, it is easy, right, to just take something that you've had a bad experience with, and just completely shut that off from here on out, right? But it is a challenge for a lot of people to, like you said, like learn from that, and then say, okay, in this situation specifically, I need to be able to, watch out for X, Y, Z, right? So it is very challenging. So I don't know, what's the best way you think you overcome situations like that instead of just cutting off things completely like that? How do you turn that into a learning experience for yourself?
Again, it's just by watching people. It's by watching people who try to say over diversify. They're passive investors and they will only invest $50,000 in a deal, but maybe they've been doing it a while now. They have $1 million they need to place this year, and they need to go off and find 20 deals this year that they can put $50,000 in. That's almost a full-time job evaluating things of that nature. They're refusing to put it into a blind fund because they don't have control over what they're going to invest in. Releasing some control, trusting other people, because maybe they put too much money in a single deal and they lost money. And now it's like, no, I can only do this. Or they're saying, I can only invest with the same advisor or the same operator twice. And then you have the opposite of that, of people who are like, I only invest with these operators because I know them, I trust them, and they're safe. Again, it's over niching yourself. You can over niche yourself into diversifying. Then you're what's over diversified, and it takes a lot of time. So just watching others and thinking to yourself, like, what is, going back to the photography analogy, like, what is the best return on my time?
Yes.
Because you're not just looking to reduce risk in your financial portfolio, you're looking to reclaim your life. That's why you're a passive investor. And the situation I'm in, asking myself, how much do I still want to be an operator, asset manager, deal finder, because the trade-off for the time is starting to not be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And so transitioning over to be more of a passive investor, you just have to watch other people, watch what they're doing. I'm constantly watching other people. I think it's just a factor of being a seventh kid in a family. You spend your entire life observing people close up and learning from them. And I continue to do that. We often say things like, don't judge, don't be judgy. But we have to. We've been given that ability to discern. That doesn't mean that I think the person is a bad person if they make a bad decision. I just can judge for myself if I agree or disagree with it. What would I do in that situation? It's just like defensive driving. You see something over there, you think, oh, I might have to deal with that when I get to that point. A kid just darted into the crosswalk or whatever. I would never dart into a crosswalk. What am I going to do if I get up there and a kid darts in front of the crosswalk? And you're just constantly evaluating situations. And most of the things that you're looking at in defensive driving never happen, but at least you're contemplating and you're safer because you're always weighing, you're always judging, you're always discerning. And it's like, don't judge people, but you certainly should judge situations and decisions and life.
No, absolutely. And like I do really enjoy it when you like touch on like the time being highly rewarded, because like so many people don't like see that yet, right? That like time really is like the most valuable thing that we have, and we just give it away so freely. So like the fact that you think about it very, very often, right? Like even now, like so many people are like, oh, well, I got into real estate for more time. And a lot of people don't want to say what you said, because they've made that commitment out loud. They've been showing up at the meetups. They've been showing up at the conferences. So for them to step back and say, like, my time is being taken away again. Like, what is the point of all this when I can find a way in real estate to have that time fit? It's like really finding like what works best for you and your life. But because we all like see each other in the space so often, it's like, well, if I disappear, will it look like I failed? But like, at what point do we not let those potential beliefs from other people impact us? And just when we tell ourselves like time is important, that we truly like believe ourselves and understand it and actually do what we say we're going to do. And so I really like that you like touch on that, because it is extremely, extremely important.
Well, I mean, if we go back to the title of your podcast, your business, The Adventurous Real Estate Investing, let's just focus on the word adventurous. There's another analogy. I'm like an analogy factory today.
I love it.
Green, right? We go on adventures because they're fun, because they're interesting. They're also often hard. Let's take hiking, for example, mountain biking, traveling to a foreign city. Like, these things are challenging, they're difficult, but we do it because they're fun and interesting. They're also filled with risk. And so you can get a guidebook, you can talk to people who've done it before, but at a certain point, you have to just step out on the limb, go take the risk and do it yourself. And that's not to say you're going to just go jump into it, jump off the deep end. There's another analogy. We can go and we can put a toe in the water. We can talk to other people around the pool. We can stand at the end. We can look at it. We can, hang on the end and just drop down into the water. There are ways that we can take baby steps, make evaluations, and do micro pivots to reduce our risk. But at the end of all of this, if you want to be an adventurer and you want to reclaim your time, location, and financial freedom, it does take risk. And to get time, you have to trade time for it. It's a tricky balance, because we say, oh, so many people get into real estate because they want more passive income and they want more time. And then 5 years into it, they realize all they did was give themselves an 80-hour-a-week job that's 10 times as stressful as any other job that they've ever had. And so constantly evaluating that, being true and real with yourself about why did I start this? And is where I am getting me to that original reason why? Do I need to rethink the original reason why? That evaluation has to be constant. I just call that baby steps and micro pivots, rather than committing all in and maybe potentially getting yourself into a dangerous situation. You're just going to keep evaluating and keep pivoting until you hit on something that you really like. And then eventually even that won't be good enough, and you'll make some more micro pivots. It's life. We never arrive. We like to think we're going to arrive. I'm going to reach my goals. I've got financial freedom, 100% passive income, and now we can travel around. And they're like, okay, now what? So, and I've got kind of a sad story along those lines. I have a really good friend, a very old friend, who I found out passed away recently. She's my age. We went to school together, and we talked a couple of months ago. She quit her job, living on her investments, just really taking a sabbatical, taking a gap year, and rethinking what's next, what comes next. And so she was talking about doing a real estate based business. So we were connecting and trying to flesh out what that might look like. And then she passed away unexpectedly. And there's nothing like that would give you insight and perspective into where you're going in life. I'm really glad that she took that time to step back, to take her sabbatical or her gap year, to evaluate where she was going in life and planning her next big adventure. And then when she passed away way too young, at least she had that time to really reflect and evaluate on her life. That's really all any of us can ask for.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for sharing that. And I am very sorry for your loss, because that is very, very unfortunate. But it is really still beautiful that like she took that time to like even notice that there is so much more out there, and that even now when you reflect upon it, like you can see, like how valuable time is as well. So thank you so much for that.
So Emma, unfortunately, we're coming to the end of the show, which brings us to the Adventurous Four. These are the 4 exploratory questions we ask every guest. So the first question is, where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
I don't actually like traveling.
Okay.
I like moving. I like living places. So I lived in Central Europe for a little while as a young adult. We lived in Austin, Texas for 20 years. And the whole time we were there, I love Austin. I love Austin. And I just couldn't wait to leave. And it wasn't because I had a problem with Austin. I just like to wander. I'm a nomad. So I have some places on my bucket list that I'd really like to go, but it's because places I want to live rather than travel to. So we're actually working on getting our permanent residency in Mexico. There's no minimum stay per year, but we can wander down there and stay as long as we want. And having the freedom to go where I want, stay as long as I want, leave, whatever, without worrying about my visa expiring or I've got to be out for this many days before I can come back in. Like I want to get to the point where we just have more options and start stacking up residencies and maybe even some more citizenships so that we can just be more free. So Mexico, Portugal, I love Eastern Europe. So maybe somewhere in Georgia, or I love the Albanian coast on the Italy side. Might try someplace in Central America. And then we've been to Asia, but I haven't spent a lot of time there. So I think it would be interesting to explore some areas like, Malaysia or Philippines, Vietnam, those types of places. So I just want the ability to just be able to wander, spend a few months here, a few months there. And when I get sick of it, Salt Lake City, awesome. I love it here. It'll probably be our home base for the rest of our lives and be a place for us to always be coming back to and coming home to. And I think that just stems from my mom growing up in the military and not really having a home base. Being American without really being an American. She came back to the States and had a British accent and just never really felt like there was a home. So that is a good motivator for me to have a home base, and that'll be Salt Lake. And we'll just do whatever we want.
No, I love it. And I think the second one actually ties into like part of your answer for the first, but is what is the number one thing on your bucket list, and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it? But I think a lot of that was answered because what you're doing, you can leverage all of real estate, to be able to do it.
Yep. Figuring out how to make the real estate business more remote, maybe not more passive, because I like doing it and I want to keep doing it. I just want it to be a little bit more location independent. And my husband has a W-2 job, so he's not going to be able to remote in from abroad. He can remote in anywhere in the US and Canada. So we may go wandering stateside. Here, kids are homeschooled, he's fully remote. And so we'll go wandering stateside, and we just get to the point when we can go live someplace cheap just off of the real estate income. We'll go do that while we're still building it. Yeah. And just doing it a little bit more remote would be the goal.
Love it. So the third question is, what is one piece of advice for someone who wants to start passively investing in real estate?
If I could go back and change anything about my real estate investing, it would go back to when I had little kids and I was so focused on little kids and running my little cottage businesses that I was not investing my income. You should use your income to buy assets, and then the assets pay for your lifestyle. Period. I don't care what part of life you're in. I don't care what it is that you're investing in, whether you want a house hack or you want to build or whatever. There are tons of ways to get there. But the thing that underlies all of that is whatever income you're making, spend as little of that as possible, invest as much as you can until you can start spinning off the investments and living off that. If I had used that cash from my photography or graphic design businesses to instead of supplement the income by taking vacations and giving the kids piano lessons and things that we weren't able to do on the single income, instead of doing that, I should have bought rental houses. And in 5 years, I could have been taking vacations on the backs of the rental houses instead of always struggling for the next dollar so we can go on the next vacation. So that is the number one piece of advice. And I think that underpins every investor needs to learn this lesson.
No, and I love it. Thank you. That we definitely have not heard that one yet. So I'm glad that you shared that. And then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
I would probably do full-time family philanthropy where we wander. So finding a cause that's really important to that area. I heard a TED Talk years ago where this group went to someplace in Africa and they were going to teach all the Africans, all the poor Africans, how to farm. And they found this beautiful fertile soil down by the river, and they were teaching them, come down and we're going to plant the vegetable garden here. And suddenly you're not going to be in a poor squalor village anymore. And none of the natives who lived there really were interested in this aid group, couldn't really figure out why, until one day they were down there gardening and this giant hippo came out of the water and chased them all and crashed everything to pieces. And the people who lived there, the locals, were like, yeah, been there, tried that, hippos. How completely out of touch they were with what the locals actually needed. And so they retooled their entire approach to just listening.
Yeah.
What do you actually need? What would really be helpful? So I think that would be fascinating for me. I have some ideas of what I think people need and some nonprofits that I would like to do. But I think it will be really interesting to get to some of these places where I think they might need this thing and find out if they actually do. So just doing a lot of recon, finding a very impactful when the thing that you're hearing over and over and over again. And I love to, like the previous question, what underpins, what's the foundation? How do we categorize all these problems and get as much solved in one bucket as possible, figuring out that thing that it's going to solve most of as many of these as possible, and really just throwing everything into that. I don't know what it's going to be, because I might have to go plant a vegetable garden that gets attacked by hippos before I figure out what it is. Would love to spend time with the family traveling and finding those causes.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we end the show, Emma, would you mind sharing with our listeners how they can get a hold of you?
Yeah, I love social media. I'm Emma Powell 28 on Facebook and LinkedIn. I have a Facebook group that has a couple thousand members in it now. It's a passive real estate. So facebook.com/groups/passive real estate. You can get a hold of me on Instagram at Passive Income Adventures. And that's more like what you do, where you just chronicle the cool stuff that you're up to. So a little bit about real estate, a lot about hiking, camping, scuba diving, things like that. Love to connect on social. And then my website, where you can get a time on my calendar to have a 30-minute call. You can join my investment club, which is where we pool our money to go invest in other people's deals, so we have less stress and more time. That's at higrise.group. So HIGHRISE.group. And lots of good resources over there to get a hold of me.
No, and they absolutely are. And you should definitely check out her Instagram, because it is so much fun to follow. But thank you so much for being on the show, Emma. It was such a pleasure. And I'm just so happy you could share this space with us.
Thank you so much. I again, just a little bit of fangirling on you too, just because you have gone out and you have walked the talk. So congratulations, and really looking forward to what you have coming up, and looking forward to your deals that I can invest in instead of run.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Well, until next time, explore more, adventure awaits.
Woo!